Hi, I'm Kathy Barker from Software Solutions, and in this video I'd like to go through the meeting aspect of Microsoft Teams. Now you can start a meeting in a couple of locations. If I happen to be in chat, I would simply choose the chat group that I wanted to have a meeting with. Now in an earlier video we looked at how you created these chat groups. So I'm just going to click on this chat group, and under here where the message is, there's this particular button called Schedule a Meeting. Now if I click this button, let me just bring this into view, then I can say what the meeting's about. So I'm just going to say it's our second review meeting. Because I was sitting on that particular chat group, it's immediately added them to the participants list. If I had some people I wanted to then add also, I would simply click in here and start typing their name. If I had some optional people, I'd hit this option here and I'd include them as optional. So they're not required at the meeting, but they can optionally attend if they'd like to. I'll then decide on the date of the meeting. So let's go for, say, November the 23rd. And I'm going to start the meeting at, say, 10 in the morning. And we're just going to go for 1 hour. This meeting is not recurring, though I do have this option here to say, look, it's weekly, it's monthly, it's yearly, or it's got some sort of recurring interval. And I can also add a channel if I wished. In the add location, I have the option to add a physical location, or at the moment, online meeting is turned on. So if it's not an online meeting, then I actually would type a physical location. And then I turn this option off. Any meeting details I would simply put into here, including maybe links to background information. This meeting will show as busy in my calendar, though I have the option to say I'm actually out of the office. This is actually a private appointment. I'll be working elsewhere for this meeting, or it's tentative until they both agree, or I want to be seen as free and available to take calls even though I'm in a meeting. Up here we have categories, and these categories come from Outlook. We also have a time zone, and because it is physically in a particular location, we'll all be in the same time zone, but if this meeting is an online meeting, sometimes I need to specify a time zone. To ensure the success of the participants, it's a really good idea to use the scheduling assistant. If I go to the scheduling assistant, I can actually see if these two people are actually available on that date and at that time, and they actually are. The problem is I am not actually available. I actually have a commitment from 8:30 till 1. So I'm going to move the meeting time just by picking up the meeting and moving it to this slot here. So to ensure or increase the success of everybody being able to make the meeting, use the scheduling assistant and ensure that everybody is free on that date and that time. And then I'll go back to the details about the meeting. And I'll simply send. So that's creating a meeting in a chat. What I'd like to do now is actually create a meeting in a calendar. So if I go to my calendar, for example, and I look up the top right hand corner, I have the option to meet now, which is an impromptu quick meeting, or I have the option to plan or schedule a new meeting. And if I hit this drop down here, I can actually choose some templates if it's a virtual appointment or a webinar, but I'm just going to schedule a meeting. This particular meeting, I'll give a title. I'll add the required attendees. I'll stipulate the date. I'll just click my scheduling assistant and make sure everybody's available. I'll then go back to details. This is a recurring meeting, so I'm going to change this to weekly. So it occurs every Thursday, and save. But it's actually an online meeting, so I'm going to leave it as online meeting. The details, I'm going to ask that everyone, on the right hand side here, who can bypass the lobby? You may have discovered when you actually have a meeting that people sit in the lobby until the meeting organizer admits them. And if you've got a large number of people or even a small group, that can be a little bit annoying. So you can click this drop down here and say that everyone can bypass the lobby. I go for this option. So people that are invited can just bypass the lobby. I have the option to automatically record the meeting as well, and I'd have to make sure that everybody was okay with that. This options button simply hides these options and shows these options, but there are more options. Nobody will be dialing into this meeting, so there's no need for bypassing the lobby or letting me know if people have left or joined through dial-in. I would like a co-organiser, so I'm going to hit this drop down here and ask that SSPC5 actually help me with this meeting. Everybody can present at the meeting, but I do have the option to say that only specific people can present at the meeting. I do want to allow a microphone for attendees so they can speak, and I do want to allow the camera for attendees in case I want to see them. I don't want to record the meeting automatically, and I do want to turn the meeting chat on so people can ask questions, and I want to allow reactions. So I'm just going to click Save. Now down here you have the option to use Microsoft Loop to create an agenda. I'm going to click here to edit. The agenda is a really handy option. I'm going to say we have a community update. We then have an operational update. These are pretty standard for our staff meetings. So this is my agenda. These are the topics I would like discussed. I can add any meeting notes here, and I can add any follow-up tasks here. So when the meeting actually transpires, I can write notes in here as the meeting occurs. And following that meeting, I can jot down follow-up or action items, tasks that I want people to do. When creating a meeting, you may also notice at the top here that you have response options. For example, I may want to request responses. I do need to know who's attending and who's not. I can turn that off if that's not necessary, or turn it on if I want to see who's accepted, who's declined, and who's tentatively accepted. Allow forwarding is if you want to allow one of the participants of this meeting to actually forward this meeting request to somebody else so that maybe they can join in, or maybe forward it to their personal email account. So that's something you have to consider as well. Now I'm just going to send my meeting request. If I now navigate to the 16th of November, I can see that I've got a staff meeting starting on the 16th and occurring every Thursday, you can see them here, until the end of the year. And I'll go back to today. What if I want to create a webinar? A webinar which is effectively a meeting, and I want to invite everybody in the organisation, but I do need them to register because it's going to be quite a large audience. So I'm going to go New Meeting. Let me bring this window in. I'm going to call it, the attendees are going to be everybody. The date is going to be November the 30th. I'm just going to check my scheduling assistant to make sure everybody's free. Now I can see that people are actually busy on that 30th, but there is a bit of a space here at 1 o'clock. So I'm going to move it to there, and it's an hour, so I'll stretch it. So we're going to go from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock on the 30th of November, and everybody I can see is able to attend if they're using their calendars. I'm going to go back to the meeting details. What I'd like now is to create or require registration. So I'm going to click this option here, and registration is required, I'm going to say for everyone. I'm then going to click this second link here, which allows me to create a webinar registration. First thing I want to do is upload an image, and I'll click Upload an Image. Simply choose an image, and I'll just resize it and move it. Zoom in a little bit. Done. Next thing I want to do is add a title. So I've added a title. It's pulled through the date and the time that I chose in the scheduling assistant, and it's recognised the time zone that I'm in. I can limit the number of people who can register, so I'm going to actually limit it to 100. I would like to ask them to fill in their first name, their surname, their email, but I'd also like to add some extra fields. I'm going to add a field, and I have these choices. So I might ask a customised question, and I require their input. My question is mobile, phone, in case I need to ring them for whatever reason. And I'm going to say that this input is required. I'm then going to add another field, customize question and choice. Would you prefer an electronic or hard copy of the financials? So first option is electronic, and I'll add another option, hard copy. And this is also a required question. So you can add as many questions as you like, whether they be input, where they just type text, or whether they make a choice. There will be a speaker. I'm just going to add the speaker's name here, Kathy Barker. And her bio will be her LinkedIn account, which I'll just copy and paste into here. And I can add as many speakers as I would like. The description is this. To save my registration form, I'm just going to click this save button here, which allows me to save and to preview the form. This is what my form will look like. There's my input with a little red asterisk because it's required, and there's also my choices. There's my speaker and the details about my particular webinar. If I felt I needed to make more changes to my registration form, I'd simply click Edit. If I needed to create a copy to the registration link, I would simply click this button here, and I would add that copy of that link to a website, to a SharePoint site, to email, anything that I wanted to share the link with so that people could register to attend this particular webinar. Ultimately, I want to close this registration form, so I'm going to hit the X. And now I'm ready to simply send out my invites. So I'm going to hit Send. You can see that on November the 30th, we have the financials webinar. So if I now want to track how my attendance responses are going to my webinar, I'm just going to go on my calendar to November the 30th. There's my financials webinar there. If I click that and then just go Edit, I can see on the right hand side that SSBC 5 is accepted, 8 is accepted, 7 has actually declined, they're unable to make it, and we still don't have a response from 6 and 2. So you can easily see how you're tracking on the right hand side. You can also go into your registration just by clicking this option here. So that's how you would track your meeting. So I'm just going to close. That's planning a meeting. Let's look at actually attending a meeting. So I'm just going to hit my Meet Now option and just start the meeting. So whenever we go to attend a meeting or start a meeting, we usually encounter this first. And this allows us to check things like our video camera is on and our sound is on and things like that. So I'm just going to join now. I can now make a copy link to this meeting and email it to somebody quickly, or I can add participants, or I can share via the default email, which is Outlook. I'm just going to X that, and I'm sitting in my meeting. What I'd like to look at now is the collection of buttons that you've got at the top here when you're in a meeting. And the first button I want to look at is the chat button, which shows a conversation panel on the right hand side of your screen. Now the chat panel is really good when you want to ask a question but you don't want to interrupt the speaker. Do we have a copy of the latest figures? Might be a question. And I'll send that, and here it is here. People can see the chats as they go through and come up on the chat panel, and the speaker can respond to them real time, or they could decide to respond to them later. Others can type a message in response, or even just rest on it and react to a question, saying you like the question, or you love the question, or you think the question's funny. So use the chat panel on the right if it's available in your meeting. Now, if I close the chat panel, the next button is people, and this shows me the participants of the meeting. So I can see myself as the organizer, and my mic is on at the moment, but I can see there are 3 others who are in attendance and their mics are turned off, and there's 2 others that were invited but haven't yet attended. I could type their names and share an invite and invite them to the meeting just by using these 2 options here. Now the third button is raise, and notice when I rest on it, it says the shortcut key combination is Control-Shift-K. Control-Shift-K will raise and lower your hand, just like this button does. If I click this button, then I can actually see a raised hand here, a raised hand here, and the basic speaker is informed that somebody wants to ask a question. And if the question has already been answered and you want to lower your hand, Control-Shift-K or click the button again to lower your hand. So raise your hand when you want to catch the attention of the speaker rather than interrupt. But do remember to lower your hand. That's the biggest problem. Now, when something is said, you can also react. And so what we've got here is the reaction, and we can say that we like what the speaker just said by clicking like, and a little like thumb will appear, but also tends to float up the screen so everybody can see you like that. You can also love something or applause it because you think it's a brilliant idea. The other reaction you have is to laugh or to actually be surprised that that is the case. So you do have various reactions which are quite handy. And there's also a variety of ways that you can view those who are in attendance in the meeting. I'm going to go to this view button, and I currently have gallery, but let's say I want speaker. So then the emphasis is actually on the speaker and others auxiliary to that. But if you go into view, you've got like together mode. And together mode allows you to apply a scene. It might be an auditorium, it might be an amphitheatre, or it might be a classroom. If I choose classroom, for example, I can assign seats. And so what I could do is actually drag somebody and drop them into a seat. And that's where I want them to sit. So if you go into the view button, experiment with the different ways that you can view those in your meeting. You're not going to disrupt the meeting, or you're the only person who sees what you choose. Now notes is another handy little feature, and if I click notes, I'm able now to type agenda items, meeting notes, and even tasks that are going to follow this meeting. You just start typing. Now the next button is rooms. If you have less than 300 people, but a large number of people, often brainstorming and conversation, effective conversation, is not possible with that number of people. So as a meeting organizer or a meeting co-organizer, you can break people into breakout rooms. So they all attend the meeting, but you might decide for 10 minutes you're going to break them out into separate rooms so that they can actually have a good conversation. Now, participants are assigned, and there is currently 2 rooms, and so breakout rooms have already been created, but they're closed at the moment. Let me just delete and remove the rooms. So, if you haven't created breakout rooms and you hit the rooms button, this is the first thing you're going to see. It's going to ask you how many rooms do you want, and you can have anywhere between 1 and 50. But I might decide I'll have just 2 breakout rooms. You can ask Teams to automatically assign 1 to 2 people to each of those rooms and just randomly assign them to rooms, or you can manually assign people to rooms. If I go automatic and then I create the rooms, it'll create the 2 rooms. You have the option then to give these rooms names if that's helpful. You can even delete a room if you no longer need it. 2 people have been assigned to this room and 1 person's been assigned to this room because there's only 3 people in attendance. I can open up the room and have a look. I can open up this room, and now people, or 1 person in this case, is now working in that breakout room. And there they are there. I can close those rooms so everybody comes back to the meeting. And now everybody's back at the main meeting. So have a look at breakout rooms. Breakout rooms are great when you want to break people into separate virtual rooms to have a conversation, brainstorm ideas, and then come back to the group. And under more, we've got things like record and transcribe. So what we can do here is we can start recording the meeting. We've also got meeting information, which brings up information about the meeting, and you can quickly copy the join information and send it to somebody. You can go into more and you can choose effects and avatars. Effects is if you are sitting in an environment where you want to blur your background, you can choose a standard blur and then apply, or you can choose one of these lovely backgrounds here and apply. And that will just disguise the environment that you're sitting in. The other thing you can do is you can create an avatar for yourself. So if you don't want to appear in person, you can actually create an avatar that reflects you, such as I have here. You can apply that avatar. So have a look at maybe creating an avatar if you don't want to be in person, video effects if you want to blur your background or give yourself a different background. Those are the sorts of things that you can do in your meetings using effects and avatars. Language and speech, you have the ability to turn on live captions. Just like YouTube and TVs, you can actually have live captions. Various settings in here as well, device settings to check that your microphone is set up correctly and that your camera is set up correctly. And you can even change your meeting options in here. The most important options, I think, are these three here. Turning on and turning off your camera. If you are going to be a distraction to those in the meetings because you have got other people around you or other things going on around you, you can actually turn your camera off, which means that typically they just see your initials. Control-Shift-O is a really good key combination to turn the camera off and turn the camera on. The next button is your microphone, and Control-Shift-M is a very good key combination to turn off and turn on your microphone. So if you're not speaking, you typically should turn your microphone off so people can't hear the background noise. And also if you want to share your screen or a window or the whiteboard or any of the files that you've got open, for example, then this is your share button. And Control-Shift-E is how you turn on and turn off the sharing. So I recommend that you learn those three shortcut key combination. Control-Shift-O for your camera, Control-Shift-M for your microphone, and Control-Shift-E for sharing. And then ultimately when you want to leave the meeting, you can end the meeting or leave the meeting. There is a drop down, especially if you're the meeting organizer, you can end it, but I'm just